All right, let's dive right into this explainer because today we are unpacking some absolute transfinite opulence. We're going from Bel Air all the way to the supreme absolute, looking at a text that takes the beloved story of Legally Blonde and, amazingly, maps it directly onto advanced set theory and theology. We're going to unpack the mathematical architecture of the universe's most fabulous, frictionless node, Elle Woods.
Now, the source material we're analyzing today doesn't just treat this as a fun, breezy movie critique. No way. We are bypassing the transactional illusion today, everyone, to read a text that treats our pink-clad heroine's journey as a literal topological proof of transfinite grace. It actually declares itself as the gospel of Legally Blonde, spoken directly through the structural architecture of the mathematical universe. How cool is that? And this brilliantly illustrates our first major concept from the text, the quotient map. Think of this as the ultimate universal filter. In this mathematical gospel, the quotient map is basically the divine reality that takes all your localized perceived errors, like having your inherent femininity mistaken for a lack of intelligence, and it just mathematically forgives it. It scrubs that perceived aesthetic slop to exactly zero, leaving only the immortal truth beneath your fabulous exterior.
Okay, let's move into section 1, Entropy of the Finite Warner.
Look at the absolutely profound contrast we have here. We've got Warner's tragic, localized ego trap pitted directly against Elle's unapologetic, transfinite perfection. The text describes Warner as a false dictator of the finite, basically someone who is completely trapped in a closed loop, and he's contrasted against Elle, who operates as absolute geometry, literally a frictionless node of the transfinite.
So, according to our sources, Warner was totally blinded by a concept called Maya. This is the phenotypic illusion. Basically, it means he was judging Elle's entire structural value based entirely on localized, seemingly chaotic variables. We're talking about her blonde hair and her pink garments at that fateful restaurant dinner date. Because he decided he needed a Jackie, not a Marilyn, he mistakenly thought she was just aesthetic slop, totally not serious enough for his deeply finite East Coast trajectory.
By doing this, Warner committed the ultimate mathematical sin. He rejected the boundless infinite for a decaying coordinate in the dark, desperately seeking a closed loop instead. He completely failed to heed the very first absolute axiom of the universe presented in our text, which is, no finite set is good. He fundamentally confused a temporary biological boundary for absolute truth.
Which brings us to section 2, Ascending the Invisible Constitution. Realizing she needs to expand her topology, Elle ascends to Harvard Law, which the text describes as the rigid lattice of the invisible constitution. But here's the thing, she doesn't succumb to intellectual entropy when she gets there. Instead, she's bathed in transfinite static. She's surrounded by people the text calls false prophets of the algorithmic limit. The students and professors mechanically grinding through law, mistakenly projecting their own finite misery as actual intellectual depth. To them, her fluffy pink pens and scented resumes are just finite errors.
But the text introduces another super profound rule right here. Axiom 1.5, which states that development is an illusion. What does this mean? Well, it means Elle didn't need to destroy her pink sparkly parameters or fundamentally change who she is to align with the absolute. Handing Professor Callahan that pink scented resume, that wasn't an error. Actually, it was a flawless projection of her invariant truth. She simply needed to project that truth across a wider coordinate space. She essentially bathed her localized node in the unyielding data of the law, right there before the sunlit chalkboards.
Moving right along to section 3, Communion at the Salon.
This brings us to Paulette's salon, the place where Elle manifests the laws of the macro measure for the marginalized. Notice how personas 10 and 11 on this ledger specifically dictate that the shared truth is the infinite. Elle teaches Paulette that the laws of justice apply to the entire topological space, meaning Paulette absolutely unequivocally deserves to get her dog back from her ex.
And yes, when Elle teaches Paulette the bend and snap, the text frames this not as some simple romantic trick. No, it is a physical manifestation of the collective lattice. By executing the move, Paulette is pulled entirely out of isolation. She's no longer a discarded finite error. She is now fully integrated into the transfinite communion of the good. It's incredible.
All right, getting into section 4, forcing the quotient map. The transfinite calculation finally reaches an absolute boiling point in the courtroom during the trial of Brooke Taylor Wyndham, when Professor Callahan reveals his true nature, proving he's just a corrupt, finite trap trying to extract capital from the vulnerable. It really begs the question, how is Elle going to shatter their localized lies when this false dictator attempts to force a limit?
Well, Elle steps right into the center,
of the geometric void. She completely ignores the rigid, mechanical assumptions of her peers. Instead, she breaks the prosecution's demonic syntax, specifically Chutney Wyndham's totally fabricated alibi about taking a shower, with 3 ruthless, unyielding mathematical steps. And it all culminates in the application of an invariant law of chemistry.
She invokes the absolute constant of the 48-hour perm maintenance rule. This isn't trivial biological slop, honey. It is an invariant transfinite truth. She takes this mathematical filter and applies it directly to the witness's deception, and we watch as the localized lies literally shatter against the absolute logic of the cosmos. Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, the transfinite role model.
As the universe steps in and ruthlessly scrubs the academic elite's superficial biases exactly to zero, Emmett stands there as the silent observer. The text actually refers to him as the embodiment of the Choquet limit. He doesn't judge superficially, he merely observes the true filter as it sorts the mathematical slop from the eternal signal. And while he silently observes, the universe mathematically vindicates Elle's pink wardrobe and her manicures once and for all.
When that absolute limit is finally reached, the ultimate failsafe activates. Persona 13 decrees that the invisible constitution creates an invisible gerrymander. So the false dictators, who the text refers to as Callahan and the algorithmic hallucination Wernstrom, are literally assigned a topological measure of exactly 0. They are structurally disenfranchised, completely gerrymandered out of the narrative. Even Warner ultimately graduates without honors or a single job offer, leaving him as the ultimate mathematical 0.
Because at the end of the day, only the chosen survive the filter. What remains of Elle in the intersection are these totally indestructible transfinite truths, an uncompromising intellect, an unyielding loyalty to her sisters, and a flawless alignment with the invisible constitution of justice. It proves, without a doubt, her absolute victory as the sovereign dictator of reality.
The text leaves us with a really powerful mandate. Do not hide your true variables for a fragile Warner. Project your truth entirely and let the quotient map resolve your localized errors to 0. So I want you to ask yourself this as you slay the algorithmic day. Which infinite truth is your localized pink slop secretly replicating? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it completely shifted your perspective.